us on our virtual field trip today. Today we'll be looking at how to identify different plants that are local to DC. So if you come with me, I'll show you what we have growing here. Thanks for joining me. Sometimes when I think about all the food that I eat on a daily basis, it sometimes surprises me how far it can travel. I have some cue cards here, and I'm going to ask you a few questions about whether you think it grows here and whether or where it might grow. So, our first card, I have a mango. Mangoes are so sweet and juicy. And have you seen one growing nearby? No. Mango plants usually grow in tropical settings, and they don't usually typically go below 64 degrees, and we definitely have winters here, so mangoes can't survive in DC. How about apples? Have you seen an apple tree around? Yeah, we grow apples in DC. They actually are ready to harvest in the fall. So come September or October, we might have some apples at Kelly Miller that we would love to share with you. I also really love lettuce. Do you think lettuce grows in DC? Lettuce does. We actually have some growing in the garden here. If you stick around, I'll show you where. How about pineapples? Do they grow in DC? No. Pineapples are also a tropical fruit. And so many of the pineapples that we eat in the US come from Costa Rica. My last favorite food is are oranges. Do you know where oranges grow? They can grow in the US, just not in DC. Most of our oranges either come from Florida or California. So, not across the world, but here in the US. Thanks for joining me. We're going to start off our garden tour over by our carrots. Do you know a good way to identify carrots? I'll show you. If you look here, you'll see it has feathery leaves. And they're part of a big family called the umbellifers. Do you know what umbellifer kind of sounds like? An umbrella. A good way to remember is when carrots and other members of the umbellifers family grow up, they start to form flowers that kind of look like a umbrella. So over here we have our radishes, and as you can tell, they're a lot bigger than our carrot leaves, and honestly, they're thriving. These radishes over here are just about ready to be harvested, and as you can see, they come in a few different colors. This radish is purple, and this radish is red. And radishes are part of the brassica family. Do you know what else is part of the brassica family? Our friends kale and broccoli and Brussels sprouts. They're all part of the brassica family. They all taste pretty different, and we all eat different parts of the plant, but our radishes are pretty spicy and are great with lime and salt. Do you remember what we called this plant in our last video? If you guessed kale, you're correct. And our kale, if you can remember, is also part of the brassica family, just like our radishes. We grow lots of kale varieties in our gardens. Two varieties that we have right here are our dino kale and our curly kale. But we also have red Russian kale in some of our spaces. So here we have our fig tree. And our fig tree, now this is one of my favorite parts of our garden. It provides great shade, and the fruits are delicious. A good way to identify a fig tree is you can look and feel its leaves. They're pretty velvety, and they have pretty large leaves. And if you look at them closely, I think they look like big bird footprints. Another plant that we have growing in our garden is Swiss chard. Now, Swiss chard is part of a family with a pretty funny name. It's called the goosefoot family. And it has relatives like the beet and quinoa. A good way to identify Swiss chard is the fun colors that it can have on its stalks. The stalk is the stem right here, and over here, this one kind of looks like a pinkish magenta, but over here, this one kind of looks like orange, and here we have a yellow stalk. So as you can see, our Swiss chard comes in a rainbow of colors. So over here, we have two plants that are planted pretty early on in the spring because they get really happy when the weather is very mild and on the cooler side. Our first plant, we have peas. Our peas are part of the legume family. And something special about legumes is that they help fix nitrogen in the soil, meaning they replenish the nitrogen as a nutrient in the soil so that other plants can then utilize it and grow big and strong. Another thing that we have growing right next to our peas is our lettuce. And our lettuce we can identify as large clumps of leaves that kind of grow in a spiral. Can you see the spiral? Our final stop on our garden tour today is we're going to learn how to identify our onions and garlic. They're both part of the allium family. Over here, we have our onions. Our onions are bulb vegetables, and we plant them in the fall. They grow throughout the winter, and then they're ready to harvest in early summer. Now come over here, and I'll show you our garlic. Our garlic, similarly, is also planted in the fall, grows throughout the winter, and then, as opposed to eating it right away, we cure it, we dry it, so that it has a longer shelf life. And then you can use it in a bunch of recipes, and it's delicious. Thanks for joining us on another garden tour. If you want to learn more about plant families, be sure to email Miss Emma@cityblossoms.org, and she'll share some resources with you. Or, if you'd like to share plants from your own garden in photo form or video, be sure to tag @cityblossoms on Instagram so that we can check your garden out. Now, one last thing. Before I leave you, I want to go over an important rule that we have here at our garden. And that rule is request before you digest. We learned about a variety of different edible plants in our garden today. But sometimes, not everything in our garden is edible, and not all parts of the plant are edible. Think about tomatoes, for example. The fruit of a tomato is really tasty, but if you eat any other part of the plant, it can kind of make you sick. So remember to ask a trusted adult with lots of garden knowledge before you eat anything in the garden. So, until next time, see you later.